All right, guys. Today we are going to be working on Lesson 2 in Booklet 3, that is Introducing Percents. So perhaps you've worked with percents before, in which case this will be a nice review, but I do teach percents from scratch, so if you are not comfortable with percentages, that's okay too. Now for this lesson, you have the lesson itself, which is 1 page long, followed by the worksheets, which I believe are 2 pages for Lesson 2. Now, percentages are a fast way to describe how much of something we have. Percentages are based on 100 parts. So usually, not always, but usually, and in this lesson, your percentage is going to be a number between 1, or rather a number between 0 and 100. Now, to have 0% of something means to have nothing, and to have 100% of something means to have 100 out of 100 parts, so we have all of it. Every number in between that gets closer and closer to 100 represents more and more parts that we would have. Let's use this visual below to help us out. Here, I have a box with many tiny squares in it. Now, if we were to count this out, we would realize that this box is 10 squares wide and 10 squares long. What that means is that I have 10 times 10, or 100 squares in this box. I'm going to use this to help me visualize percentages. Remember, percents are based on 100 parts, and there are 100 squares in this box. So each tiny square is going to represent 1%. So if I was to say I own 1% of this box, that just means that I own 1 square, right? Maybe this square right here. So I have a very small percentage, or a very small amount. That is 1%. If I was to say that I have 100%, that means that I have everything. I have every one of the squares filled in. If I was to say I have 10%, that means that I have 10 squares filled in, as I'm highlighting now. Right? This would be 10%. A single column, 10 blocks. Now, we don't just use percentages to describe the number of squares in this grid. You use percentages pretty often in your day-to-day life. For example, if I come to you and ask, how far are you through the homework of today's lesson? A quick way to describe that to me might be something like, I am 50% of the way through. Now, because 50 is half of 100, that means that you're halfway through your homework. Comparatively, if you were to say, I'm 5% of the way through, 5% is very far from 100, so you've just started. If you say, I'm 90% done my homework, that means that you're almost done. 90% of the way through is very close to 100%, which would be all of your homework. Let's start filling in the lesson. Percents are based on 100 parts. If our work is 75% complete, then 75 out of 100 parts are finished. We can also think about percents in terms of a shape containing 100 squares, each square being 1 part, or 1%. The large block on the right has a total of 100 smaller blocks. In this example, 24 of those blocks are shaded. If I wanted to double check this, You don't need to count every single block individually. Remember that each column is 10 blocks, right? So we can count easily 10 plus 10 plus 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 24 blocks that are shaded in. 2 columns and then 4 more. So we say 24% of this grid is shaded in. Another way to represent a percent is as a fraction, where you're going to take the shaded parts and divide it by the total parts. Effectively, all that you need to do is take the percent and divide it by 100. So 24% and 24 out of 100 mean the same thing. Example 1 asks us to write the amount of shaded area both as a percent and as a fraction. The first thing that we need to do in each of these is count the number of boxes that are shaded in. And again, don't count them one by one because we know highlighting is useless here. Can't even see the highlighting through this. Sorry, let me start again. Take shortcuts when you're counting. Each column is 10. So here I have 10, 20, 30, 40. I wrote 10 4 times because that is 40 blocks of columns. And then on top of that, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more. So I have 47 blocks, or 47% of this grid filled in. In other words, 47 out of 100 of my blocks are filled in. Let's take a look at the second example. Please don't count up all of these blocks. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 columns filled in. Since each column has 10 blocks, that is 90 blocks that are filled in. 90% of the grid, or 90 out of 100 parts filled. The final question has just less than 10, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 blocks shaded in. That's not very many. That's a pretty small amount of the entire grid. Only 9%. This can be written as 9 out of 100. So you can visualize in these 3 examples how a small amount of shaded area gives us a small number, and a large amount of shaded area gives us a larger number, such as 90%. Example 2 asks us to find which of the following images shows 33% of the parts shaded. Now we know that each percent is 1 block, so we only need to find the picture that has 33 blocks shaded in. Let's start with the first image. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. Now I could count each and every one of these blocks, but already I know that this is more than 33%. This is more than 40%. So that is not the one I'm looking for. Similarly, figure 2 is larger or a higher percent than figure 1. So I can start counting if I want, but I can already see just by looking at it, this is definitely more than 33%. This is more than 70%. Which means that the first and the second figure are not what I'm looking for. The third figure has 2 columns, so 20 parts, and then 21, 22, 23. So this is 23%, not what I'm looking for. So likely it's the 4th picture, in case we've messed up really bad, but let's double check. We have 1, 2, 3 columns, so that's 30 parts, and then 31, 32, 33 of these blocks are shaded in. So the answer is figure 4. As usual, please let me know if you have any questions. We're going to continue to work with percentages throughout this booklet, so it's important that they make sense. Take some time filling in the worksheets for lesson 2. Thank you.